Hello everyone! Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sel and I post videos about adult coloring and art. Today I'm sharing my finished pages for June. Let's get these out of the way. Let's start with Mania 2. The pages I colored here at the start of June, I finished this page. This is colored using crayons. These were the Temu crayons that I showed in my Temu free and discounted products video. I will link that video in the description. I colored the sky and the mushrooms using that crayon and used water to spread it around like water soluble crayon, and it worked really great. But I think there's a problem with the paper. It doesn't work with wet media very well. So after I applied the red crayon on the mushroom cap, I applied gesso on the page, and then when it dried, I applied the blue crayon for the sky and used water to dilute it and spread it around and created the clouds. I was able to create fuzzy, fluffy clouds using that method. It worked well. However, if you use that method and there's gesso underneath and then you overwork your brush, you see that this will happen. Kind of resists the water and it just spreads the crayon underneath. So I would suggest maybe if you're going to use those crayons as water soluble crayons, not to apply it over gesso and just apply it directly on paper like what I did here. Water soluble crayons in particular work well in this paper, this Amazon paper, because it's just like copy paper. It's so thin. When you use that, you use very little water and you still get very vibrant color rather than, let's say, watercolors. I only use the crayons for the mushroom caps and the sky, and for the rest I meant to use the green crayons as well, but I forgot because I already applied gesso, and so I used Himi gouache for the rest of the picture. In general, I like how it looks. I like the vibrancy, and this is how I pictured the pages in this book would look like cartoonish and very vibrant and light. But I also thought that watercolors would look good as well, like Winnie the Pooh or Peter Rabbit type of watercolor style. So I tried that on the duplicate page. So I used the Mozart Komorebi watercolors. I thought that I could use the watercolors on its own and create Winnie the Pooh or Peter Rabbit type of illustration afterwards. But this paper really doesn't do well with wet media. So what happens is once you apply water, it just sinks into the paper and the paper darkens. Just like copy paper, when you wet it, it darkens the paper while it's wet. And then when it dries, you'll see that your pigment is actually very light. So I was very disappointed after everything dried and I had to go in with colored pencils just to give it more life. Otherwise, it's just very pale. So this is using the Color 180 color pencils on top. As you can see, it's still not vibrant. Well, at least if you've already seen this, there's no question. I do have other mediums that I ordered that are coming, and I will try those mediums on this book. Another medium that I tried, a new one, and I've shown this in my Temu art supplies video as well. This page was done using Morandi colored pencils that I ordered on Temu. The Morandi colors are supposed to be very low saturation colors, like colors that are mixed with gray, and so they're very calming and aesthetically pleasing. The problem with those pencils is that they give off very little pigment, and I have to work really hard and press hard on the paper in order for color to come out. And you can see that the burnishing that I've done at the back here, I've really pressed hard for colors to come out. And that's not how I like to color because it's a lot of effort and it hurts my hand. I didn't like those pencils in the end, but this is how it looks like, the Morandi color palette. Those are the 3 pages that I did on this book for June. And the next one is another watercolor that I did using the Mozart Komorebi watercolors again. These are the daisy flowers. This is the reference picture. This is how it's supposed to look like, but this is how I did it. Basically, I just wanted to play with the neon colors on the Komorebi set. I'm not particularly fond of this picture because when it comes to the leaves, it got really messy because if you see the picture here, you can't really tell what the scribbles are once you're coloring. Couldn't identify what the shapes were. So I was very blindly just coloring, and in the end I just put, whatever shades and just to finish it off. And you can't really define any shapes of leaves. In the first place, it's not a particularly good illustration, so the outcome is also not very good. That's what you get with a very cheap coloring book. Maybe there are some illustrations here. If you can see the strawberries, it's very confusing how the strawberries drawn, and also these lines here. You won't really be able to know how to color these without the reference image. It's like they scanned the painting and then did it in black and white, and then removed the filling and just left out the outlines and the stroke areas. So this is what you get. If you do illustrations or graphic design, I think you'll know what I mean. So that's what I did in this book. This is from Daiso, Easy Coloring for the Adults, Fruits and Flowers of the Four Seasons. And then when I was in the hospital for a major surgery, this is what I colored. Mythographic Shangri-La. I colored this page. I don't know why I chose this. I think I just randomly opened it and just decided on this one because I was attracted to the ceiling. I think we've all seen this type of place, whether it's a hotel, a museum, a palace, whatever. And then the ceilings are very ornate. That's what I did for this picture. And then I made this into like the chandelier. Out of the pictures in this book, I think I chose this one because I could identify what the elements were. The amount of small repetitive details attracted me because at the time I was in the hospital and I had my surgery, so I just wanted something that I could mindlessly color. It was very calming to color this page, and I really did enjoy it. What I don't like about this illustrator, Alessandra Fusi, is that she's not alone. I've seen reviews that Joseph does this too, Joseph Katimbang, and I don't know about other illustrator, but they copy paste the elements and just they rotate it or make them smaller, bigger, etc. For example, this element here is just copy pasted here and just reversed. This also is copy pasted. Actually, this whole background may have been just mirrored, And then these diamonds, they were obviously just copy pasted everywhere and then just resized, rotated. So that was very, very annoying to color. These plants were obviously copy pasted and just changed the orientation. It's very, very obvious. So yeah, I felt that this illustrator is maybe a little lazy. Yeah, so that's my comment about this book and this illustrator. Okay, then the next one that I colored, still while I was in the hospital, is Animorphia by Kirby. And this is my first double spread for the month. The reason I chose this page is because of the big details that I again colored mindlessly. I felt like when I opened this, I immediately knew the colors that I would use for the picture. Of course, these are chameleons, so they are camouflaged with the colors in the background. So it was easy. And then I wasn't gonna do anything special with this spread, and then in the end I just decided to add these outlines of leaves in the background just to have something interesting back there on the empty spaces. I just added that this technique. So, and then of course the stars using Posca. Yeah, I used Posca. And then for the Mythographic Shangri-La page and this one, I used this one, the Colleen 100 colors colored pencils. I love these colored pencils because you get 100 colors with just 50 colored pencils because they're double-ended. So very handy when you're traveling, and they're very pigmented. I compare them to the Crayola colored pencils. They're hard like Crayola pencils, but for some reason they're more saturated, they're more vibrant in my opinion, and they layer very, very well. As you can see here, all of this is just using the Colleen colored pencils. My nurse, actually, she was very impressed with my coloring, and I was embarrassed because she kept raving on and on about it, and I was like, you should see what other people can do with coloring. And then this is another book that I worked on in June. This is a buddy color with a bunch of people on Instagram. We have a group that colors this page. I actually joined this group recently, and Candice from Happy Catastrophe kindly added me to the group. I think it's hosted by Christina from Christina's Art Corner, and a bunch of people are there, including Jamie from Finding Joy in Color, Sherry Denowitz, Paula Bowman of Coloring Mama. Yeah, so we worked on this spread for June, but the deadline for this is July. But a lot of people have already finished in June, and so I guess I can show mine. This is Woodland Kingdom book by Toshiyuki Fukuda. And how I came up with this outcome is I just studied Toshiyuki Fukuda's portfolio and his illustration style and the color palette that he uses, and then I applied it to this page. He's very interesting because the way he colors is he puts a lot of breathing room in his illustration, so it's not very jam-packed with very saturated colors. He distributes the colors in places and then gives it breathing room. So some places are just white with some shades of blue or pink or green, and then some areas are really very colorful. Like for example, like these I don't know what you call this pattern. He likes to do this red, yellow, blue interspersed with white, so I just applied that on these patterns. It took me a while to figure out what this one is, and then towards the end I colored this last because I couldn't figure out what was going on. I knew that this is a fox and this is his face and this is his tail, but I didn't know what this was. And then when I finished the rest of the page, that's when I realized there's a tree and then there's a mushroom in front. And that's what's going on. And this is like a small plant beside the mushroom. And so that's how I figured out what's going on here. So, my tip, if you have this book and you have trouble also figuring out things, is just color the areas that you're sure about, and then eventually things will appear and patterns will emerge, and you'll recognize the same patterns. Very, very interesting and addicting. Once you start coloring this book, it's hard to stop because it's like a puzzle, you know, one shape and then another and then another, and then you've, before you know it, you've completed the bird, and then you want to do something again. So it's very, very addicting. I highly recommend this book, Woodland Kingdom. I got the Japanese version, which is smaller. The English version is a lot bigger. Okay, then I also colored Lulu Mayo. I colored this one. I colored this one before my surgery, and I was testing out my new Restley pastel markers. So you can see that I use a lot of neon fluorescent colors, especially on the magical creatures here. On the bottom, I still use the pastel markers, but more greens and blues. So no neons here. I focused all the neons up here. And then I also used pearlescent watercolors from Timu as well to add some shine and glitter on the bubble. So you can see how it really, really shines in the light. Very pretty. And then I added this highlight for the bubble, white highlight for the bubble using gouache. Yeah, I think that overall this page is very whimsical, and I just had fun with the multimedia aspect of this. So I used markers, I used pencils, watercolor, and gouache to complete this page. I don't normally go to all that trouble to use a lot of mixed media, but slowly I'm learning to be less lazy and do that for the sake of my page. And then I did this one. This one is also using the Restley pastel markers. The flowers here are purely with the pastel markers, as well as the leaves, frogs. And the flowers, I think, is a mix of markers, gouache, pencils. Yeah, I used gouache also on some areas. And then metallic poster color for the ribbon, the gold ribbon. And then, yeah, gouache for her hair, skin, and then acrylic paint for her dress. And I added a watercolor shimmer, a pearlescent watercolor over it for some shine. Also around her as like a halo. I should have maybe cleaned this up a little bit more. Maybe I can do that later. So, not my favorite Lulu Mayo page, but it's okay. It's done. It's a done page. And then my last one, well, second to the last, is Eerie Romantic Country. I did this one. This is the Witch and the Hidden Secret Forest. This is Romantic Country 2. I was going to use just watercolors for this picture, but again, the paper was a problem because just like what happened with the Mania book. But even though this paper is a lot thicker, the same thing happened. Paint just sank in, paper drank it all up, drank up the water, didn't allow me to spread it around. The paper got dark when wet, so I wasn't able to really do a lot with watercolor. So I had to use pencils on top, but the outcome of that was still very pale, very blah. So I decided to use some chalk pastels that I've had for 20 years that I just found in my drawer, and I tried to use it on this page, and I think that it helped to brighten this page a lot more than its original outcome. However, it's very dirty and messy. If you can, I don't know if you can see how messy and dirty it is in this page, because I don't have a fixative, so it still gets smudged around when I close the book. I like what happened to the background here compared to what I initially did with watercolors only. It looks very much more smooth and polished and even. So I also used the chalk pastels on the ground. I mixed brown, green, and yellow green or light green to achieve this for the ground, and I really like it. I really like the chalk pastels, very saturated. They're the Mungyo Gallery chalk pastels, very saturated. When I get a fixative, then I'll be able to, I think, use it more confidently. So yeah, that is my eerie double spread. A lot of double spreads for the month of June. If you look at the books, it seems like I did only a few pages, but it's because there were a lot of double spreads. If you actually count those double spreads as 2 pages, then I actually did more than 10 pages this month. The last coloring that I will show you are my flower colorings. These are the 30 Days of Flower from Johanna Basford's World of Flowers. She has a downloadable PDF for a 30 Days of Flowers challenge where you're supposed to color 30 flowers in a month, 1 flower a day. But I colored it all in one go. I copied the flowers on this sketchbook, watercolor paper sketchbook, and I colored them using watercolors. So that was a good exercise, and I enjoyed that so much that I colored more flowers on my own drawing of flowers, which is this one. Yeah, so I practiced more flower painting with watercolors at the end of June, and I really found it very relaxing, therapeutic. So I'm probably the slowest flower watercolor painter in the world, but I really enjoy the slow process of building up the colors. Yeah, I really like this practice of watercolor painting, and I will for sure continue to do it in the next few months. And if for those who would like to try watercolor painting of flowers, I did upload some practice sheets of watercolor flowers, also using the same flowers. So it's on my Ko-fi, and so it looks like this. So you get 2 same flower to practice on per sheet, but in my downloadable practice sheet you have also the photo of this flower and the color guide, so you're able to swatch and mix for the same colors that I used for these flowers. So check it out if you want to practice flower watercolor painting as well. So those are all my colorings for June. Thank you for joining me in this video, and I hope that you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite, and take care and keep coloring. Bye!